for this last episode of the Rutledge Perspective Radio Show Live of 2021, I want to talk about ripple effect. We've talked a lot this year about impact, about words matter, about how you show up, all of these little things, not little things, all these important things and critical to how we exist, right? And how we touch others, because none of us does this alone. And we are all interconnected. So there's always something that touches you to someone else. And as usual, some things occurred and I listened to some podcasts and I always get ideas from these things because they always challenge my perspective. And that's the whole point of the show, the Rutledge Perspective, is I do have a perspective, but I also like to challenge my perspective and therefore challenge yours, because that's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we get better. That's how we move forward into whatever this is, this dream, this purpose that we have. And so there were a couple of things that happened. The latest one just happened yesterday, or at least I heard about it Sunday. Heard about it Sunday. It happened on Sunday. And that was the passing of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And talk about someone whose life had ripple effects around the world, right? His joy, his absolute joy. I was looking back at videos when Nelson Mandela was released, and also when they had the first vote, the first democratic vote in South Africa. He was the Archbishop of Cape Town. And just the pure joy of this human was incredible. His strength, his willingness to speak out, as he led this commission on apartheid, both finding out what was going on from the pro-apartheid folks, as well as the anti-apartheid. Those extremes both acted in ways that were just unacceptable. And his commission, he was put in charge of this commission to really root that out and get to some reconciliation and some restitution for some of that stuff on both sides. What a novel idea. And yet his words, he had a book and some speeches that he did with the Dalai Lama all around joy, just being joyful. And those ripple effects from this guy, this life that he led, this Nobel Peace Prize winner, the life that he led really impacted people around the world, and countries and governments around the world from such humble beginnings. So that happened. The other thing was, as I was driving, because I went home to see my mom over the holidays, which was awesome. And I was driving back and I listened to this podcast both on the way and coming back. It was just that good, at least for me. It was just that good. And it was How I Built This, which is a fantastic podcast if you've never listened to it. Sometimes, though, you gotta be mindful of your spirit, where your spirit is to listen to it, because How I Built This is all about these businesses and how they built businesses, entrepreneurs. And as Guy Raz, the host, says, it's stories, right? How did people build these businesses? It's all about the stories behind that. But he's done everything from the Chuck E. Cheese people and Atari people and Lara bars and Kate Spade even. And this last one was Fawn Weaver, or the one that I listened to was Fawn Weaver, who is the CEO and founder of Nearest, Uncle Nearest, which is a Tennessee whiskey. And her story is incredible, right? She left home at 15 and on purpose left home at 15 and just decided she could do what she wanted to do on her own. And that was just, she didn't mind rules, but the rule, as she says, rules have to make sense to her. And the rules at her home didn't make sense to her. And she lived in some homeless shelters and Covenant House in particular. And she said they were like perfect places for her, right? There were absolutely rules in place, but she started her first business at 18. And I mean, just her story is incredible. But there was a couple of things that she said in this story, in this interview, because again, the interview was about how she built Uncle Nearest, which is very interesting. And so you should listen to that. But there were two things she said in there that really got me to thinking, because as I was driving and I was listening, I was like many of you, we're almost to 2022. Have we made plans? Have we set aside our intentions, right? Have we written things down? Have we, for those of you that do vision boards, have you done your vision board? Have you laid out what you want for yourself, for your business, for 2022? And more importantly, what impact do you want to make? So that's where my head was, right? Not so much the things, right? So I've told you about the things that I'm going to be doing, but the things are really about the impact that they can make, right? How can I show up in a way? How can you show up in a way that provides a solution for someone, that makes an impact, that makes an impact in what someone else is trying to do or on the world at large or both, right? In your corner of the world. Last week I talked about legacy and legacy and just about being the biggest and having the biggest name. It's about impact. Legacy is about impact. And how can you make an impact in your little corner of the world? And so I was thinking about that when I listened to Fawn's interview with Guy Raz, Fawn Weaver's interview with Guy Raz. And the first thing she said that got me to thinking was, I think he was asking her about, has she ever thought about how, the past happened and all this kind of stuff and what would have been different? And she said, number one, if she could do it all over again, she would do not anything different, not a single thing. The other thing she said was, I don't think about it much because I don't go backwards. I don't go backwards, which was very, very interesting, right? It actually made me pause. I'm glad I had on my cruise control because I probably would have stepped on my brakes, right? It made me pause. She said, I don't go backwards. And here's the reason it made me pause. We are at the end of 2021. And so there's all of these, let's do a year in review. Let's look back on what happened. Every morning show, and it's everything from all the people we lost to all the triumphs. It runs the gamut, right? And if you think about business and how businesses grow and projects that we have, one of the most critical things you can do when you are executing a strategy is, as you go along, have what I call postmortems. What went well, what didn't go well, what would you have done differently? All of these kind of things. It's an evaluation of past activities, past processes, right? It's the past. It's looking backwards. Yet there's this woman who has built this multi-million-dollar business in the face of an industry that is ridiculous, right? It is, as she says, when she first started, she said, go to any bar and ask them what whiskey or what liquor on their back bar is not representative of a white male. So white men, 30% of the population, 100% of the liquors, 100%. I was just blown away, right? Not one. And so part of what she's building is having to help people understand the story behind that. And the other thing about the liquor business is it's a distributor business, right? She calls it a 3-tier business. So yes, you have to make it, but then you got to get it to distributors if you want to get it on the shelves to then get it to consumers, right? So you don't sell hard liquor directly to consumers from the maker. It's not like wine, right? And so as she was talking about not looking back, don't look back. I don't look back. There was a real discord for me that says, but if you never look back, do you miss the lessons? Do you miss the learning that you would have had for the year? And I mean, if you listen to her interview, I don't think she meant that she never goes back and learns anything. Because further on the interview, she talks about how every failure she has had was a learning. There was learning in that. Her first business failed because she wasn't paying attention, right? She just hired all these people and it was way beyond what she could support. And she also actually did some incredible things with PR before everybody else was doing it, with one of the artists being Thomas Blackshear, whose stuff is incredible. His sculpture is incredible. I have one of his things. My brother has a few. They're just beautiful. But this whole idea as we go into 2022 of don't look back. Don't look back. And I would argue that it's not so much don't look back, but don't stay back. Don't stay back. Because sometimes that evaluation of what happened and how it happened and what we did and what we should have done and how we would have done it differently, if we would have done anything differently, we can get caught up in the review process and not allow ourselves to move forward to the next thing. We can get caught up in the what ifs and woulda, coulda, shouldas. And that doesn't leave room for the learning to actually have an impact on the next thing we're going to do, right? It can debilitate us and can prevent forward progress. So she says, I don't look back. I'm constantly looking forward. And that's a superpower, right? To just not be able to get caught up in what could have happened or what should have happened or what you would have done differently. And as I was recording my podcast this morning, I was like, because I can remember, and every once in a while we'll recall a conversation from decades ago thinking, I wish I'd have said, or why didn't I do, right? Decades. That is so long past. And there is so nothing I can do about it in this moment, but it comes up for some reason. It comes up. And so how do we look back as a catapult to moving forward? Using looking back as an opportunity for learning as opposed to an anchor for our growth. It was just something that I had never even considered. Just don't look back. Because the other thing is that corporate training, right? Because really good project managers, really great project managers always go back and evaluate, right? Because you can learn something from that. You can learn something from it. So that whole idea of not looking back at all was just completely foreign. But again, I had to practice the pause and really think about what she was saying. Now, she was also talking about, from a life perspective, she just doesn't look back. She doesn't go back to stuff and coulda, woulda, shoulda, and reevaluate and get all caught up in that mess. She just doesn't, which is beautiful. I wish I had that superpower. But she does move forward. The other thing that she talked about and that she mentioned in her story was her whole purpose for starting this Uncle Nearest brand was to get Nearest story told. It wasn't to take down Jack Daniels. She wasn't going after Jack Daniels, the Jack Daniels brand. That wasn't what she was trying to do. She was trying to build up the story of the first, and so far, I believe the only Black master distiller in that industry, a former enslaved person. And she used that a lot. She didn't use slave. She used enslaved person, which I really like that sidebar. Words matter. And so I've seen that a lot with people stopping the use of slaves, but rather using enslaved people. So instead of labeling someone a slave, you are talking about what was done unto them. They were enslaved people, right? Anyway, so as she was moving through and trying to make this business run, her whole purpose was impact. I want the story to be told. And she's a writer and blogger, and her husband is a movie producer. And so part of the story when they went to Tennessee was they ended up meeting some of Jack Daniels' descendants. And of course, by now, if you guys know the history, this all came up, and all of a sudden social media got it, and as she called it was clickbait, right? There was a slave who actually did the recipe, and Jack Daniels took it, stole it, never got, just blah, 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 right? Because that's going to make people click on the story, especially now with all the social injustice going on. But when she did her research and she looked at the story, she's like, I saw this picture. And again, listen to this podcast. She said, I saw this picture. And what I saw was, it was Jack Daniel and all of his leadership team. And you could see this Black man in this picture. And she said, a lot of people were like, didn't see that. She said, what I saw was a sign of respect, because the person that was in the center of the picture was Nearest, not Jack Daniel. He had ceded his center position to Nearest. And when she met this descendant of Jack Daniel, she said, look, I know you've had a lot of people, but I think social media got it wrong. I think it's a story of love and respect. And that's the story I want to tell. And so all of these things started to transpire, right? And so ultimately she's got this brand. But here's the deal. As she was getting ready and decided to do this, she talked to Nearest relatives as well. And one of the things, they had talked about was, and she had thought about, I don't want to do whiskey, this business. Maybe we'll do a commemorative bottle, but how do you get a commemorative bottle? Because again, this 3-tier distribution system. And there are very few independent distillers, right, on this side. It's not like independent wineries, but very few independent distillers. And so there was a real tough time. She said, no, we're not going to do this. But when she talked to Nearest's relatives, and she asked them the simple question. Remember, we talk a lot about active listening. Just ask the question. Don't make an assumption. Ask the question and listen actively. And so in this meeting, she told them what she found out. They told her what they knew. And at the end, she said, what do you guys believe should be done? What's the best thing that could be done to honor Nearest? And she said she could tell that they'd been talking about it, for a while. And so one of the people raised their hand and said, Nearest should have his own bottle. He should have his own bottle. And here, remember, if you were listening last week when Christopher Wells was on, he talked about relationships and building those relationships. And sometimes you just do stuff just to do it because it's the right thing to do. And you never know how that seed, again, ripple effect, you never know how that seed planted is going to reap a harvest for you later. So as she was doing this story, right, she met all, because itty bitty town, Lynchburg, Tennessee, itty bitty town. She met all of these relatives of Daniel, Jack Daniel, and one of them came to her and said, hey, if you ever decide to do a bottle, I will come out of retirement and help you. Make sure you do it right. And this happened to be one of his relatives who was also the retired chief of operations for whiskey at Jack Daniel. So after nearest relative said, hey, we think he should have his own bottle, she started thinking about it again. And so remember, her bottom line is impact. It's the story. It's this ripple effect she wants to create to say, look, I want to tell this story not to decimate the brand of Jack Daniel, because we wouldn't know nearest story without Jack Daniel. Think about that. Think about that. That's why you got to be careful, and you got to really dig deep and listen closely about what people say, right? And to find the truth. Because if you look at the clickbait, Jack Daniel was a slave owner and they undermined this story, blah, 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 blah. But as she dug, that wasn't the case. The history proved different. They worked side by side. And in fact, at one point turned over the operations to Nearest because he couldn't do it anymore for all kinds of reasons, right? Marital reasons, that kind of stuff. And so the story of Nearest couldn't be told without Jack Daniel and without that relationship of respect and love for those two people, right? The families grew up together. They ate at the same table, as she said. And so her impact that she wants to make is to get the story told, because Nearest is certainly not the only one. He is not the only one, but his story can be told to make an impact, to lift others up, to say, look, we know that there is a significant impact on this industry by enslaved people. And in fact, Tennessee whiskey is very much built on processes that came from enslaved people, right? The way they did things, enslaved people. Same thing with rice in Carolina, all that kind of stuff that came from enslaved people. And so the impact that she wants to make is to ensure that the story is told, and told accurately, and told with respect. And she wants to build a huge business, not because the business is huge, but to get the brand to be a brand that no matter what happens, the brand survives. You know, the way she describes it is, it doesn't matter if somebody comes and buys Jack Daniel, because the brand is so solid and so strong with consumers that they can't screw it up. At this point, if some champagne maker decides to buy Brown-Forman or decides to just buy the brand Jack Daniel, they can't screw up Jack Daniel, because everybody knows Jack Daniel, right? People are going to continue to buy it. There are loyal Jack Daniel drinkers. Jack Daniel is going to be fine. That's where she wants, that's the impact she wants to have with Uncle Nearest, to build a brand so big and so solid and so well known and of such quality that it makes an impact forever, right? For generations to come. Because as she says, she's 150 years behind the Jack Daniel and the Jim Beam and the Johnnie Walker. 150 years behind those folks. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. And by focusing on the impact she's trying to make, every other decision, right now I'm projecting upon her, but every other decision is focused on how do we continue to make an impact. I mean, her thinking, think about this, someone who left school or left home at 15, continued to go to school, right? She continued to go to school. She started her own businesses, all of these kind of things. She didn't stop, right? She just lived a different life. Her thinking is insane. So I'm going to tell you about how gangster she is in a minute, but as she's building this business and building this brand, you know, one of the things that she talked about was, you know, they have had year-over-year growth for 11 quarters in a row, even through a pandemic. Exponential growth, right? Year over year during a pandemic. She continued to hire people through a pandemic. She's like, look, people are getting laid off. Let's go find the best ones out there that have been furloughed, and we're going to bring them on. We're going to keep the pedal to the metal. And then she told all of her salespeople, right? Think of something, use it as your own brand. What would you do? They were some of the first people who designed, because of one of her salespeople decided, you know what, at some point they're going to do to-go cocktails and we want to be ready. They branded jars, they had drinks, they had really easy things that you could do at home. So when it took off, they were ready. When it got legalized, they were ready. Because remember, it's not legal to do that kind of thing with liquor. It's not the same as wine. Spirits are regulated differently. That whole prohibition thing, they're regulated differently. So they knew they had to wait for legal ability to do some of these things, but they were going to be ready. Forward thinking, right? As she said, I don't go backwards, I go forward. Forward thinking. She hired fantastic people with creative ideas and told them, go figure it out. Go put a plan together. She gave them reins, right? She gave them free rein. I'm sure she had upper and lower control limits, but she gave them opportunity to be excellent, to be genius, to operate in their zones of genius. The other thing she did that was masterful, because again, her impact that she wanted to make sure his story was told. She wanted to make sure that there was a brand that honored him, a bottle that honored him, because that's what the families wanted. That's what the families wanted. So that's her impact. So what did she do? She knew Jack Daniel, they were going to come after her hard. She knew, she's like, you know what? I knew they could throw absolutely anything. They could throw so much stuff at me. So I got prepared before I even talked to them. She said, I went to them directly. I talked to them. I reached out to them. But before I did that, I had all my trademarks in place. I already knew what fair use meant. She did her research. She did the work. She did the work, and she did it in silence. She didn't tell everybody. She wasn't announcing to everybody. Now, Lynchburg is a small town, so people there knew what was going on, right? But nobody was just projecting we're doing it. And plus, it's so small distillery. These big folks ain't looking at her. So she went to work. She went to work. So by the time she was able to talk to them, as she says, you could have knocked them over with a feather, because she was ready. Had all of her trademarks, all of that kind of stuff. And their issue, which she knew, was going to be the protection of the Jack Daniel brand. Now think about how big Jack Daniel is. And they want to make sure that their brand isn't hurt by this little old bottle. Uncle Nearest. Really? Right? But here's the thing. Because the stories were so intertwined, Jack Daniel brand, the Jack Daniels brand, believed that the story was theirs. Well, the story of Jack Daniel may be theirs, but the story of Nearest didn't. And so she was really good at walking that line. It's a tightrope. And like she said, she was the only one that had to walk it. Jack Daniel didn't have to walk it. So she's been very careful, and not once has she crossed over that line to put her brand in jeopardy. So they only talk about her. She only mentions the name Jack Daniel in a historical context. She got ready. She did her research. She did the work. She did the work. Because she started with, what impact are we going to make? You know, again, for her, she just wanted to tell the story. She found out about it. There was something that was in her gut that said this is a story that needed to be told. That was her bottom line. And it has since morphed to say, again, I want this brand to be as indestructible as Jack Daniel, Jim Beam, Jimmy Walker. I want it to be that indestructible. That's the impact she wants to make. So she's backing into, then what do I need to do to make that happen, right? That clarity of vision. That's the masterclass I'm going to be doing. The clarity of vision. What is it? Don't worry about the how right now. The how is none of your business, right? The how is where we get caught up. What's the what? Her what was building a brand that could stand and making an impact and honoring the life of this person that clearly had a lot of respect and love and had a great deal of knowledge to make something happen, right? That piece of the story that hadn't been told. And so because she was able to focus on the impact, I would argue that a lot of the stuff that she did was able to be successful and focused because it all had one clear vision. And because she was clear, all the people she hired around her could be clear. She knew who to hire. She knew where she was running. She knew why she was running. It was just masterful. So when I take her story and I look at her and I look at the joy and the impact and the ripple effect that Desmond Tutu had, I look at the ripple effect that this Uncle Nearest brand is going to have. Because it's not about the liquor, right? It's about what she's building and the story behind what she's building. Well, if you look at the ripple effect of Christopher Wells here in Houston, right, that was here last week, of just continuing to impact in education. There were so many things that were kindred spirits there. As my brother and I are doing some of the same things, right? And there's plenty of room for all of us to do those things. There are so many people who in need. Keep moving, y'all. Keep moving. Don't stop doing it because you think somebody else is doing it. One, they're not you, so you're going to have your own take on it. But there are so many people who need help. Just do. So it was all of these things that came together around the impact and the ripple effect that you want to make that I say, yes, let's review 2021. Let's look at the amazing things that happened, because in the midst of all the madness, there are some really cool things that happen, and we should celebrate those. I'm horrible at that. We should celebrate those successes. We should look at those things that went well. We should look at the triumphs, right? All of those really hard times that we powered through, weren't sure if we were going to make it, but we did. We came out the other side, maybe a little more battle tested and definitely wounded and scarred, but we're on the other side. Take that as a move forward. Use that as your foundation as a move forward. So don't let the review of the past become an anchor for your present, as opposed to a foundation upon which you to continue to move. Because that's sometimes what happens, especially for those of us who are overthinkers, right? What do we do? Well, let me look at it one more time. Let me think about that one more time. Did I miss something? What could I have done differently? And I'm still chewing on that 6 months later. Really? At some point, you got to let it go. Let it go. You can't redo it. It's done. What's done is done. And if you did the best you could with the information that you had at the time, own that, learn from it, and keep it moving. Now, I'm talking to y'all just as much as I'm talking to me, right? So, physician, heal thyself, right? Keep it moving. But if you focus, if I think about Desmond Tutu, you think about Christopher Wells, if you think about Kyra Rennell, who was on here, you think about Holly, who was here, you think about Kendall, you think about Laura, you think about the guests that I've had here, the guests that have been on my podcast, the ripple effects of the impact they want to make. It's all about how they want to touch people. It's not about the thing. The thing is just a tool for the impact. The thing is not the focus. The impact is the focus. And sometimes we get caught up in the thing, the how. How are we going to do that? And I've got the t-shirt on that. How am I going to do that? How am I going to get it done? How am I going to make sure tech is done? How am I going to make, I don't know. And I can get caught up in that, because even though it's hard and it can get you tied up in your underwear around it, there's also some comfort in being in that turmoil. Because at least you know and understand the turmoil. What you don't know is what's going to happen when you actually pursue the thing. Because we can't know. That's about control. That's about trust. That's about understanding that you are enough, that in this moment, right? Trust yourself. I have this on my computer. I look at it multiple times a day. Something that I did when I was doing through my therapy sessions. And it says, trust yourself. In this moment, you are enough. In this moment, you have everything that you need. And I read that multiple times a day. I've given that to a few clients to say, you need to put that on your thing too. Trust yourself. Because that fear of the unknown can be debilitating, right? That fight, flight, or freeze, that polyvagal, where we're in that, oh my gosh, or we get so worried that we do nothing, that dorsal, or we're in that frenzied kind of energy that may not be productive. You're getting stuff done, but is it really moving you forward, or is it just you're able to check stuff off the list, but is that stuff really getting you further towards your goal? It's important to think through that, to really be focused on, where am I trying to go? What is the impact that I'm trying to make? What's the what? What's my what? We always talk about why. That's your getting grounded. You're getting grounded. How do you get grounded in who you are? But that vision, what's your what? Clarifying that vision. That's okay. Because how do you know? If you don't know where you're going, how do you know who you need on your team? How do you know what needs to happen? You don't. You're just fumbling around in the wind. So get grounded, build that trust in yourself, understand that you are enough. Know where you need to go when you are in that dorsal or even in that systemic, right? Just that frenetic fight or flight. Know where you need to go to reset your feet, to ground your roots, right? That root ball that you have, how do you need to nourish that stuff so you are fully grounded? Whether or not in that season you're having to be a palm tree where you're just swaying every time there's so much stuff coming at you, but you are resilient, you're just swaying, or you're bamboo, right? You can lean all the way over, but you are going to continue to stand upright. And not only that, you are going to completely prosper because bamboo will take over. It's invasive. Or whether or not it's time for you to set your roots strong because you are going to stand strong and not waver. You're going to be that redwood, been around 200 years, right? Nothing can take you down. You're going to be that strong, right? Because whatever it is in that moment, you need to be unwavering. All of that is reliant upon having that really solid grounding, understanding what your root system is. For me, it's faith, it's family, it's friends, and it's health. And that health is financial, physical, mental, emotional, right? Those are my four: faith, family, friends, and health. Those are my four. If something's wrong in my world, I go back to that root system, and one of those things is off all the time. Like right now, I know things are off because I ate way too much over the holidays. So my word for 2022 looks like it's going to be discipline, just FYI. So it's really important that you get solid in understanding who you are so that you can get clear on the impact you want to make. What is that thing you want to do? Then you can start thinking about that why, right? Because it should connect back. It should connect back to that grounding. It should connect back to those skills that you have and the way you want to serve the world, right? That vision should connect back. And then you just got to get in action. You got to move into action, make some things happen. And you can't know the ultimate outcome. None of us can. All we can know is what we can do in the moment to impact, hopefully, what we want to do, the ripple effects we want to make. Mackenzie Scott is making huge ripple effects. The money she's giving away to the organizations that are making a difference, that ripple effect is going to last for generations. Because money makes the world go round, y'all. Right, wrong, or indifferent, right? It can also be the root of all evil, but it is a necessary evil. What you do with that money is another issue, right? But having it, or the lack thereof, is truly impactful. And so you can make ripple effects from that as well, right? Because ripple effects can be good or bad. And generational poverty has ripple effects, right? They'll call them generational curses. Another word for generational curses is those ripple effects. What you do impacts others. And I real that visual just means so much to me, right? If you think about when you put a drop of water, right? You see the ripple effects. Or if a fish is coming up and getting air, when they break the surface, the ripples. And there's all kinds of math around that and physics around how far the ripples go and how fast they go and how long they continue to go. Even after you can't actually physically see them, there's still a level of ripple that's happening, right, in the surface, in that water or that sand or whatever. Because the wind also creates ripple effects in sand. It's everywhere. Ripple effects are everywhere. And they can be good or bad. And so what are you doing? That impact that you're making, what are those ripple effects that are going to happen based on that impact? What ripple effect are your actions going to take? Right? Accidents have ripple effects. Right? That chain reaction. When there's a rear end and nobody behind them is paying attention, or people are going so fast, there's not enough room in between. And you have those 20-car pileups, 30-car pileups, especially on the ice and snow. That ripple effect of someone's misfortune, or in some cases, bad decision, right, has had a ripple effect on multiple people that may have nothing to do with that person, may have no other connection. But in that moment, they're connected through a common situation, a common experience. So how can we look at what we do, where we go, what impact we want to make, and understand how those ripple effects happen? And how can we manage through some of those ripple effects? How can we change the ripple, so to speak? What words do we use? Words have power. Words have impact. How do we speak truth to power when it's necessary? Because that has an impact. How do we understand the story we're trying to tell and then back into how, right? Focus on the what. The how will take care of itself. And that's a lesson that I still learn because the how is normal, right? And for me, Libra that I am, this is one place that I am truly a Libra. When somebody's way, way, way strategic, here's where we're going, and here's my vision, and and they never talk about how, I'm like, okay, that's great, but what are we going to do? What are the steps that need to take in order to make that happen? On the other side of that, if somebody's like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and all these details, but they have not talked at all about where it's going to go, then I'm like, but where are we going? Because is all that stuff going to get us where we're going? It takes a combination of what and how. It absolutely does. But it starts with that strategy. It starts with that vision. It starts with knowing what your what is. What is it you're trying to do? And how is it connected to your why, right? And to who you are. And then how do you determine what steps need to be taken? How you're going to get it done. How you're going to get it done. And that's what we're going to work on in my Empowered Academy, Empowered Action Academy. That's the 3-month coaching that I'm going to be doing in small groups. It's that taking your grounding and your vision and moving it into action. And so as we go into 2022, woo, please don't let us go into 2021 again. As we go into 2022, with just these few days left, if you've already done your vision board, if you've already written down all of your goals, if you've already done all of that kind of stuff already, I have a challenge for you. Go back and see how much of that is truly about an impact you want to make and ripple effects and your what that you want to do, right? And it's grounded in who you are, and how much of it is how. And is your what really clear? Is your vision really clear? And are you clear on why that's your vision? Or are you just doing a vision board because that's the thing to do? Because everybody says if you want to manifest, you got to do a vision board. Now, I'm not a big vision board person. I know people who love them and they work really well for them. They're a great way. And I'm visual, which is really weird why vision boards don't work for me. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Because it's also a creative process. So you would think that I would be all over the vision board thing. I don't know why. For me, it's much more hand to paper, right? Colored pencils and that kind of stuff. It's that hand heart, hand mind connection that I have to have. But go back and look at whatever your thing is in your prep for 2022. What is the impact that you're making? And if you can't look at what you put together and understand your impact, go back and reevaluate it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying that you've missed something. I'm just saying, can you articulate it? Because if you can articulate it, then when things go squirrely, because they will, you can go back to, where am I trying to go? And does this thing tell me something? Is it telling me that where I'm trying to go is not where I should be? Is it telling me, no, I'm still in the right place. This is just a side detour, and maybe there's something I need to learn? You're less likely to get turned inside out or upside down by distractions or unplanned events if you're really clear on where you're going, on your ultimate destination. Because the journey could be a straight line, but most likely it's not. And when you're on that crooked journey, in order to stay focused, if you can stay focused on your destination, right, that can help. There's all kinds of things. And that's the other thing, a little bit of perspective, is to try not to operate in absolutes. So on one side, people say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And that's true. That is true. There's also a need to know where you're going in order to understand that the journey is productive. It's both. Maybe in life, it's about the journey, not about the destination, right? That keeps us in the moment, that helps keep us present. That kind of mantra helps keep us present. When you're building something, that focus on the destination is what enables you to manage through the journey, right? Both things are true. Remember, we talked about that a few weeks ago too. Both can be true. The journey can be important and the destination can be important. Both can exist at the same time. Both can be true. It's not always an either or. Both can be true. And so as you're getting ready for 2022, as we're all getting ready for 2022, how do we look at both? Can you go back to the thing that you had planned, the thing that you're looking forward in the next few days to get cracking, and understand where you're trying to go? Be really clear on where you're trying to go, so that no matter what happens, you still got that in front of mind that can bolster you when things get really crazy. That's something to think about. That's something to think about. It was something I was thinking about as I was driving. Sorry, kind of dry here. So I am looking forward to 2022, actually. I'm feeling excited, feeling nervous, right? It's a high pressure year for me, of my own making, right? But feeling really excited, still feeling very much convicted and in purpose, which is also an unusual feeling for me. So I'm trying to sit in that, right? And own it and latch onto it. In my why, right? In my purpose and in my grounding. I'm trying to stay in that, understanding the ultimate destination, the ultimate impact that I want to make, and keeping that front of mind. What is your impact? The impact that I want to make, keeping that front of mind, so that as I'm moving, I know that everything that I'm doing is moving me there. Everything that I'm doing is moving me there, because when you are moving in purpose, when you're moving in impact, prosperity comes, right? Abundance comes. Those things that you need come. I believe that with my whole heart. My mind sometimes needs a little bit of convincing, but my spirit knows better. And part of that grounding exercise is trying to make sure those things are connected at all times. And when one is overtaken, that the other can balance. Or when one needs a little help, the other can bolster up, right? Because it's not easy. It's not easy. I would love to know. I don't know, Jerry, if we got people making comments. I would love to know. Send me a note, send me a DM or something. I know it's holidays too, so people are probably out and about. What are you looking forward to in 2022? And how are you getting really clear on the impact you want to make? I would love to know that. What is the impact you're trying to make? And how do we keep each other pumped up around that? What is the impact you're trying to make in 2022? Because we all have the ability to impact someone or something. All of us. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to have all the resources in the world to make an impact. You just don't. Those are not requirements of impact. Mother Teresa didn't have any of that when she started, did she? She did not. Her service and the impact she made actually began to build her reputation, or brand, for lack of a better word, right? But she didn't have money and riches and all that kind of stuff. What she had was a clear vision of the impact that she was called to make, the service she was put on this earth to give. She had a very clear vision of what that was. Now, she also had her moments. If you read about her and read some of her writings, she had her moments too of doubt. We all do. That's human nature. So get grounded, get clear, stay in action, right? Alignment, vision, and action. Stay moving forward. And that clarity can help you regroup when times get difficult, when the vision is not as clear as you thought it was, right? It can help you tremendously if you will just give yourself that opportunity to really spend the time up front, to make the time up front, right? And I'm working on doing that myself. There's some things that I really want to get completed, to be prepared. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. That hasn't left me a lot of time to spend just quiet time visioning, because it takes quiet time to vision. And so I am going to make sure I find a way to make that happen. That may mean I sleep a little less, but I'm going to find a way to make that happen. That's also why I believe my word, actually, I probably have two words: discipline and consistency for 2022. Discipline and consistency. Those are the two for me. Those are the ones that came to me. You know, as you guys know, I tell you all the time, things come to me at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Those things come to me. And what impact you want to make. And I especially want to talk to women, single women with no kids. Okay. Especially those of you who are working in corporate. Been there, done that, right? Single woman, no kids. No is a powerful word. As you're putting your vision together, as you're building this career in corporate or wherever it is you want to be, there's this, it's like we're this group of people that, oh, well, you can do it. You don't have kids. You don't have a spouse. You don't have a significant other. You got time. You also have a life, and you have power, and you have agency. And just because everyone else decides that because you do not have the traditional, you know, spouse and kids, that you all of a sudden are the most available, that may or may not be true. And no is a complete sentence. And not me is an okay response. Now, you have to think about that and work within your culture as much as possible. But as you're putting your vision together for this next year, I would encourage you to let go of that pressure of everybody else, that you're the one that should be doing everything, because you have time, you have space, you don't have any other obligations. Here's what you've got. You've got a life that you want to live. You have got an impact you want to make. And regardless of whether you have spouse, significant other, partner, kids, play kids, whatever, is irrelevant to the amount of time that you want to spend doing what you want to do. Absolutely irrelevant. You get to decide how you want to spend your time. You get to decide where you want to make an impact. You get to decide. You have a choice. You have a choice. And for those of you single with kids, you have a choice. You have a choice. All of us have choices. I'm just speaking to that particular group of people because I've had some conversations recently with some, and there's so much pressure on that group. And I know that because I was in that group. And people just make assumptions. They just make assumptions about your availability and your willingness to just do and go extra to quote unquote cover because you don't have anything else going on. Not only is that incorrect, it is insulting. So if you're doing that to somebody, stop it. And if you're the person that's being done into, don't tolerate it. You do have a life. You do have opportunities. You do have an ability to make an impact where you want to make an impact. And that could be at your organization, right? And probably should be, right? Because representation matters. And so as you show up and how you show up and what you do when you show up matters. It just matters. All I'm saying is you get to have a choice in how you show up and how you make your impact. All right. As we end this last show of 2021, I first want to say thank you. I want to say thank you. I know I say thank you all the time, but I really do mean it. I want to say thank you to all of you who continue to listen, who continue to make the choice to tune in, who continue to show up, because I know you have a choice, as we just talked about. I know you have a choice. And so I want to say thank you for all that. I am extremely grateful, and I feel utterly blessed to be able to spend this time with you guys. So those folks here in Houston, all of the cities that have tuned in, I know we've had people from New York and Colorado and Missouri and Kansas, and we've had Australia and Finland and the Philippines and Nigeria and Uganda and Spain and Germany and all over Canada. Thank you all for spending time with me and for lifting me up, because your presence does that. Your presence gives me the impetus to keep doing what I'm doing. The second thing I want to say is, don't put so much pressure on yourself here at the end that everything is done for, first. Tomorrow's another day. Be mindful, make a plan, execute to the best of your ability, but know that forward is forward. Even a baby step forward is forward. Get grounded. Get grounded. Know where your strength comes from and go back there when things get really crazy. Get clear on the impact you want to make and then move into action. Thank y'all for being here.
Baghdad, Santa Cruz.
Ooh, Baghdad. I think that's a first. Love it.
Washington, D.C., Oklahoma City. You said Denver, Austin, yes. Atlanta, Kansas City, San Antonio, Dallas, Wichita Falls.
Love it. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you so much for being here. I wish you guys a very safe new year, right? Please be careful. Get a designated driver if you need to. Stay home if you need to. Cover up. Follow the rules around the fireworks and all that kind of stuff. Just be very mindful and very careful. Mask up. They're saying up your mask game. KN95 or N95 masks if you can. This Omicron thing is real. Continue to get vaccinated and boosted. They're considering that now to be fully vaccinated. Get vaccinated and boosted. Take care of you. And if you're not worried about you, at least have some heart for the folks around you who may be otherwise compromised. You never know what somebody's going through. Take care. Have a fantastic end of your year. And we will catch you in 2022. Bye.